Studio WIT is a name that has exploded onto the anime sphere since they were formed, a studio that hasn't been around for as long as many other studios but has a legacy behind them that is widely respected in the realm of entertainment. In such a short amount of time, only being around for 12 years, Studio WIT has amassed success that can only be dreamed of. For having a consistent quality of high-level animation for not a relatively large studio, Studio WIT has been a name and brand synonymous with a vast level of execution. Hey, it's Leon Brando, and today we're going to be going over the animation powerhouse known as Studio WIT. This is a studio that absolutely burst onto the scene from the jump, and we're going to see how they were able to do all of the magnificent things they've been able to achieve over the years. So without further ado, here is the Anime Studio Deep Dive, Studio WIT. To start from the beginning of WIT's creation, we have to look at the company it was birthed from, Production IG. Now, Production IG is yet another studio that's heralded for their work, making the likes of Mamoru Oshii's classic film Ghost in the Shell to works like Psycho-Pass or Kuroko's Basketball, and with these works being produced by several staff, it would be George Wada who would get the ball rolling. Wada was an employee for Production IG, having worked on numerous projects under the company such as Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex Solid State Society, Kimi no Todoke, Aoshi, and others. But before he would dive into the animation world, George Wada would actually go to law school. He actually had no prospects of ever going into the animation field. After realizing that studying in the faculty of law was not for him, he shifted his sights over to working at Cisco, the IT company. But just like when he was studying at the faculty of law, he came to the conclusion that he wanted to pursue a different avenue, stating that working at Cisco, they had to sell products made by the US to then sell to Japan, but he wanted to do the exact opposite, wanting to sell Japanese products on a global scale. This would lead him into the animation sphere, having met the president of Production IG, Mitsuhisa Ishikawa, as he was giving a lecture at a seminar Wada was attending. He noticed that Japanese culture is widely accepted across the globe and realized that through the scope of animation, he would be able to see his dream come to fruition. George Wada would join Production IG in 2005. Wada would stay with Production IG for 7 years until he felt it was time to take a new step within his career. He wanted to create a studio of his own. George Wada went to the president of Production IG, Mitsuhisa Ishikawa, about the idea. Ishikawa then asked Wada on whether or not he was going to focus on founding a company or focusing on the production side of things. Wada answered with production, and Ishikawa made an offer to him to start a company as an affiliate of IG, stating that seeing as the industry was the way that it was, he'd need funding and said he would invest in the company. Of course, Wada wouldn't found WIT all on his own. He would co-found Studio WIT alongside Tetsuya Nakatake. Wada met Nakatake at Production IG. Nakatake served as an animation producer at IG, working on Kimi no Todoke, Sengoku Basa, Guilty Crown, and others. After shifting through multiple field ventures, it was fully time to get the ball rolling on a new and more worthwhile career path, something that was going to change the landscape of anime. Wada would accept the offer and Studio WIT would be founded on June 1st, 2012. Wada would clarify that while he's listed as the president for Studio WIT, he was actually doing production. He was in charge of producing the animes, finding the right people, the amount of money needed for the project, on top of receiving approval for original productions if need be. Wada stated, "In the beginning, WIT Studio was just one single room in Production IG, a room without any windows. In the beginning, there were 5 people. Because I was originally in Production IG, by the time WIT Studio was created, there were already 2 projects lined up. One of them was an original animated movie called HAL, the other one is Attack on Titan." Wada was asked if Studio WIT has a central philosophy. Of course, any company that is created usually has one, especially fledgling companies, so they give you, the audience, an idea of what it is they're trying to achieve within the company and for the specific field that they're in. Wada responded and said, "The biggest philosophy is to create animation of a quality that fans and stakeholders would be proud of. And in addition to the quality, I also make sure that the morals and the stories are something that would be accepted by everyone in the world." With Tetsuya Nakatake, he'd also tell his tale on the origins of Studio WIT, of course harkening back to his time at Production IG. Wada would work alongside Nakatake in several projects, stating that Wada was able to bring over numerous talent for the job, and that being a strong suit of his. Kyoji Asano was another important person as well that Nakatake would speak on. Kyoji Asano was an animation director over at Production IG, working on projects like Dead Leaves as a key animator, being a key animator for Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence, and being a key animator for episode 4 and 12 of Outlaw Star. With Asano jumping over with Nakatake and Wada to be in Studio WIT, other talents soon followed. Key animators such as Takaki Chiba, who worked on Le Chevalier d'Eon as an animation director, assistant animation director, and key animator, was a key animator for episodes 16, 21, and 26 of Planets, and was a key animator for episode 42 of Naruto. Kyohei Tezuka, who's worked on Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, where he would provide the key animation for episode 23, Blood Sea: The Last Dark, where he was an animation director alongside being a key animator, and served as the key animator for episode 20 of Fire Force. Tomomi Ozaki is a designer and also animator. She'd work on shows like Gossip, where she did the illustration for episode 12, was a key animator for the opening and provided the cover picture for episode 24, was a sub-character designer for Attack on Titan and also for Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress. Wada was able to see his dream become a reality. With a full studio at the ready, it was time for their first ever production to unfold, and it would start with an anime everyone is very familiar with, Attack on Titan. Wada, having read the manga for Attack on Titan, felt that it was prime material for an anime adaptation. He joined up with Pony Canyon, a Japanese publishing company, and went over to Kodansha, which is the publisher for Attack on Titan, and he essentially gave them the rundown for what his plan for this series would be. Going back to Wada's company philosophy, Attack on Titan was something very true to that statement, a story about survival and that willingness to survive to help the fellow man see the following day. It was a layup for Attack on Titan to be produced by Studio WIT. Wada told Kodansha that he'd gather the best staff he could for the production, and his starting man would be Tetsuo Araki, a person I made mention on the channel before. Tetsuo Araki was known for being an immensely talented director, having handled the anime adaptation of Death Note and High School the Dead years prior. Him putting his talents as a director on full display with Attack on Titan would make the show as memorable as it is today. Now, Attack on Titan is a show that has been talked about at length since the first episode 11 years ago, but for this to be Studio WIT's first anime, I can't think of a better start for a studio. Studio WIT would produce the first episode of Attack on Titan, airing on April 7, 2013. From the first episode alone, it gripped the entertainment world. Wada would state that he was keeping a close eye on the reaction from the internet on Twitter, saying that every time an episode was aired, the impact was amazing on Twitter, and it motivated us because we wanted to respond to their expectations and wanted the audience to enjoy. We may have heightened our hurdles by ourselves. The production side of Attack on Titan is an interesting one to say the least. It is a topic also heavily discussed on the platform and of course was brought up in an interview with George Wada. Wada was asked about how the production of the show went, and he had this to say on the matter. There were 25 episodes in all, and every time we could barely make it for the air date, so for the last few episodes I would take the freshly made tape, hop on an airplane to deliver it to TV stations around the nation. This is a really tough job as I had to repeat it every week. Wada was also asked about how the manga of Attack on Titan was selected for adaptation, and he answered by saying he actually saw Attack on Titan being advertised on the train, stating that, "When I actually started reading the manga and realized it was a story about people being stuck behind a wall, facing against the rest of the world, I synchronized that with my experience as a producer." Apparently, it is very important for the people who are working on something to have some sort of synchronization with the story that they work on. So, to bring a certain level of authenticity, it just so happened that Kodansha, the copyright holder of the series, was also looking for people who have a great resume to work on it. Attack on Titan would go on a meteoric rise for being one of the most popular pieces of entertainment in 2013, landing at crossovers of Marvel Entertainment with a crossover comic titled Attack on Avengers. This comic saw Titans coming out of the oceans of Manhattan while Spider-Man, Captain America, and the rest of the Avengers battled the Titans. No appearances of the main characters were shown, however, just the Titans. Other crossovers would include being DLC in Dead or Alive 5 Last Round. You get to battle on the stage of Walmaria and also be able to wear the Scout Regiment uniforms for your favorite characters, but this is just a taste of the impact it would have. WIT would produce 3 seasons of Attack on Titan, and ultimately for the final season it would have a studio change. As we know by now, Studio Mappa would be the ones to finish off the rest of the Attack on Titan series, and Wada himself would shed some light on the entire situation. It came as a shock to many at the time that WIT would not be producing the latter parts of Attack on Titan and would be produced by another studio. With that being said, however, Wada would touch on the actual process of what's happening with the development of said shows. On an interview with Anime News Network, Wada would explain that DVD sales were a factor in how these seasons would be developed, stating, "As a business model, the decision to make a sequel depended entirely on DVD sales. At that time, for all of those titles that you just mentioned, we had only been contracted for season 1. Then once the DVD sales come in, we would get an offer to do a second season based on that." Adding to that, he'd say, "At the time my management skills weren't as good as they are today, so I couldn't add the next seasons to the schedule right away because I had already had other shows lined up for funding. And of course, the fans and the publishers want to get the second season out as quickly as possible, which is what led it to being animated by another studio." Of course, times have changed where the emphasis is more put on streaming rather than Blu-ray sales, which Wada would even say in his interview, but with Attack on Titan, it was a colossal shoes to fill, pun intended, with taking over such a project, a series so widely respected, but what gave Mappa their blessing with regard to handling the show. But of course, Attack on Titan wouldn't be the only thing WIT worked on in this year. On June 8, 2013, Studio WIT would release an original film titled Howl. This romantic drama stars a girl named Kurumi who has to deal with the loss of her boyfriend. Wallowing in grief over this fact turned her life into a rather miserable one, until a scientist comes along and attempts to break Kurumi out of her shell by making a robot in the same vein as Howl. The movie deals with their relationship as the days go on. Howl would mark the directorial debut of Ryotaro Makihara. Makihara worked on shows as a key animator such as Paranoia Agent, Monster, Naruto, and was even a key animator on the opening of Blood Plus prior to his work on HAL. Michiru Oshima provided the soundtrack for HAL. She'd be in charge of scores for other projects such as Casher and Full Metal Alchemist and Little Witch Academia. Yusuke Takada was given the role of art director for the movie. Yusuke Takada had previous work as a background artist while also being an art director for shows like Evangelion, Golden Boy, and Die Buster. Atsuko Nozaki was the animation director for HAL. Nozaki would be known for her work on being a key animator for Naruto Shippuden. She would do character key animation in Evangelion 1.0, You Are Not Alone, and Tokyo Magnitude 8.0 as a character designer. In 2013, Studio WIT was able to take a manga and make it into a series juggernaut, but what about their other series? On January 10, 2014, WIT would animate the first season of Hozuki's Coolheadedness. Hozuki's Coolheadedness was an adaptation of a manga of the same name written by Eguchi Natsumi. It's a story about a demon bureaucrat named Hozuki who is an inhabitant of Hell and works for the god of death King Enma as he manages other demons. Hozuki has to try to fix up a lot of problems that happen to Hell's fellow inhabitants with his cool and composed behavior. Hozuki's Coolheadedness will be animated by Studio WIT for one season ending on April 4, 2014. It was directed by Hiro Kaburagi, who also worked on shows like Welcome to the NHK as an episode director for episodes 5, 13, and 22, while also doing the storyboard on the second ending song along with being a storyboard artist for episode 5, 10, 14, and 22. He was also a storyboard artist for episode 9 of Hanebado, and also being a storyboard artist and episode director for Fantastic Children. Midori Goto wrote the screenplay and also served as the design manager and worked on the series composition for the anime, while Hirotaka Kato worked on the character designs on top of being the chief animation director. As for what series composition is for anime, it is essentially a role given to the main writer of the series. They meet with the director and sometimes producers during pre-production to draft the concept of the series, come up with major events, and decide how to pace it all. Hirotaka Kato also worked on iShield 21 as a character designer for episodes 112 to 145, served as the chief animation director and key animator on The Empire of Corpses, and will work on HAL as an animation director. Midori Goto worked as a scriptwriter for the second season of Bang Dream while also providing work for Attack on Titan Junior High School as a scriptwriter and was in charge of series composition, while also doing work on Genshiken Nadaime as a scriptwriter. Tetsuya Nagatake would be the animation producer behind the project as well. Even though Studio JOEN would take over production for the second season, a fair amount of the staff still remained the same and worked on the project thereafter. Midori Goto was still the scriptwriter for the second season and was in charge of the series composition. January 11, 2015 saw the release of Studio WIT's first original anime, The Rolling Girls. The Rolling Girls is a story about Japan being split up into independent nations after the Great Tokyo War. A prophet has total control over said nations, which are called Mosa, an entire army called Mob. 4 girls, a part of said mob, have to travel to Japan to settle disputes going on around the nation. George Wada would handle the planning for Rolling Girls, while also being the producer. The Rolling Girls ran for one season ending on March 29, 2015. Tetsuya Nagatake also worked on this project as the animation director. Kotomi Dei would be the director for The Rolling Girls. Her past work includes being an assistant episode director and worked on storyboarding for Ergo Proxy. She was also a production assistant on Samurai Champloo and worked on Michiko and Hachin as an episode director and on storyboards. Katsuhiko Kitada was a character designer on the show. You'll know him from works like Gurren Lagann, where he was a key animator. He was also a key animator for Evangelion 2.0 You Cannot Advance and was a key animator for Banana Fish. Although The Rolling Girls isn't WIT's biggest anime to date, it wouldn't be the last time they would create an original work. On April 4, 2015, the anime adaptation of Seraph of The End would debut, based on the manga by Takaya Kagami. George Wada was again in charge of planning and produced the anime. Tetsuya Nagatake would serve as the animation producer. Seraph of the End was about a virus that kills off anyone that isn't under the age of 13, and said children were then taken into captivity by vampires, and one boy's fight against his captors. Hiroshi Seko, a very well-known man within the anime sphere, worked on this project as well, working on titles like Mob Psycho 100, where he'd write the script and did the series composition for every season. He worked as a scriptwriter and production assistant for Panty and Stocking, and Jujutsu Kaisen as a scriptwriter and worked on series composition. Even at this earlier point in his career, his past projects made him no stranger to more action-oriented series, especially with Seraph of the End being a jump title, so he'd be best suited to work on this action series. Hiroyuki Sawano would provide the music for the opening. I've talked about Sawano's musical contributions to the anime world before, but Seraph of the End would be another show under his belt. Takuma Ebisu, who was originally a part of Production IG, worked on this project as well. Currently he's an employee of WIT, a part of their main staff, but he helped with the prop design and was a main animator on Seraph of the End. His other works include being a key animator on Kizuna Part 1, served as a key animator on Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works 2nd season, and of course worked on being an action animator, key animator, animation director, and many other titles on the first 3 seasons of Attack on Titan. Megumi Tomita was a main animator for Seraph of The End, alongside being a key animator and assistant animation director. Also, she's someone that is employed at Studio WIT to this very day, and her work would include Blood Blockade Battlefront, where she was a key animator and animation director. She'd work on the 3rd Madoka Magica movie as a key animator. Megumi Tomita would also lend her talents to After the Rain as a key animator on episode 10. Takafumi Wada would be in charge of the score for Seraph of the End. He'd also provide work on soundtracks for other anime such as High School of the Dead, Seven Deadly Sins, Ride Back, and Thunderbolt Fantasy. On October 2nd, 2015, Ryotaro Makihara will be back in the director's seat for the release of The Empire of Corpses. The Empire of Corpses was an adaptation of the same name written by the late Project Ito, real name Satoshi Ito. Satoshi Ito was a science fiction writer and essayist befriending the likes of Hideo Kojima. Ito's novel, The Empire of Corpses, would release on August 12, 2012, 3 years after his death. Ito's work would then be adapted into 3 films across 3 different anime studios, with the first one being animated by Studio WIT. The Empire of Corpses is a story about a man named John Watson, a man who lives in 19th century Europe where human corpses called Frankensteins live amongst human beings but are given souls and forced to work to uphold the industrial development of his town. Hiroyuki Tanaka would be the assistant director on this project. Tanaka would make his directorial debut on Claymore. Other products like X, Vampire Hunter, Cardcaptor Sakura, he'd be an episode director for those works. Takaki Chiba served as the character designer for the film alongside Tomoyuki Yamasaki, who was the original character designer for the work. Now with regard to what these roles are, I'll explain. See, an original character designer is the person that designed the character originally, i.e. being the source material. This serves as the basis for what the character should look like, and the character designer uses this as a reference and helps to bring this look to life for the animators. Yusuke Takada would also be the art director for this film as well, returning back into that role for yet another project. Also, because I personally found this interesting, Tomoyuki Yamasaki would eventually go on to design Hololive EN's V-Singer Iris years later. Just felt like throwing that in there. The Empire of Corpses would get a limited theatrical release over here in the West, licensed by now defunct company Funimation. It was released on April 19th and 20th, 2016. It would make $43,320 at the box office. WIT would also dabble into the video game scene as well. On April 20th, 2016, WIT would collaborate with Nintendo and release an animated short for Star Fox Zero called Star Fox Zero: The Battle Begins. This would be based on the Star Fox rail shooter game they released the day after the short was made. Kyoji Asano, Yusuke Takada, and Takuma Ebisu would all return for the project. Kyoji Asano would direct the short while also handling the storyboard. Eiji Umehara was tasked with handling the script. His prior works would be a scriptwriter for Re:Zero, and he was a scriptwriter for episode 3 of Halo Legend, and was a production assistant on Shin-Chan. Takuma Ebisu was the key animator for the short, and the one and the only Shigeru Miyamoto was an executive producer for the product as well. Yusuke Takada would be behind the art direction for it too. Star Fox Zero: The Battle Begins was a prequel to the Star Fox Zero game, telling the story of Fox McCloud and the gang banding together to save General Pepper from Andross. WIT would venture into video games again, but more on that later. On April 8th, 2016 would mark the year when the anime original series Kabaneri of the Aryan Fortress would release. The highly stylized fantasy action drama would be under the directorial eye of Tetsuro Araki. A series like this was something Tetsuro Araki could elevate given his track record, and of course, this fitting into genres that he's very well versed in. Seeing as Attack on Titan bolstered his success and popularity, he was undoubtedly the right person for the task of bringing this series to new heights. And speaking of new heights, Hiroyuki Sawano would be attached to another WIT project by making the soundtrack for the show. A series like this not only being directed by Araki but also having a score done by Sawano, WIT knew how to assemble stacked teams for their projects. Haruhiko Mikimoto was in charge of the original character design for the show, and this was something that Tetsuo Araki himself pushed for. In an interview with Full Frontal Moe, Araki was asked how he was able to land Haruhiko Mikimoto for Kabaneri, and he stated that, "At WIT Studio, there are many animators specialized in animating action scenes. We wanted to emphasize their work. We also wanted to produce an animation which would satisfy the current watchers. That's when we asked ourselves, how about doing animation which would look old without feeling old? We took inspiration from several shows from the 80s, and that's how we ended up asking Mikimoto to participate in the conceptual character design." Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress is a story about a group of survivors that seek refuge on a train but would later be attacked by monsters called the Kabane. Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress was a project that felt very personal to Tetsuo Araki. He'd take inspiration from Gundam, a series he fell in love with as a child, to try and incorporate what he loves into this show. He'd state that, "The series was loaded with themes that I enjoy, and everything just happened to turn out that way. There were only two main themes I had in mind when I was coming up with the basic setting. One was to make the series historical, and the other was to ensure that transportation took place in Hayajiro, a type of armored steam train. All the other elements are based on those two themes and came naturally as I continued to think. I thought about how the characters would live and how they would fight. It wasn't like I was trying to pack in as many elements and themes as possible. On the contrary, the importance of preventing the story from becoming one where anything goes was always in the back of my mind. Yoko Matsuzaki would supervise Kabaneri. Her other works would include being a chief producer on Erased, was in charge of production on Ping Pong the Animation, and was a chief producer of Your Lie in April. Eiichiro Okochi is another important name to be mentioned for the production of Kabaneri. He would work on the series composition for the show. Okochi is mainly known for being the co-creator of Code Geass. He'd also write the script for Azumanga Daioh alongside writing an episode for Space Dandy. Araki would talk at length about the characterization of the show. He'd say that, basically, I'm a person who enjoys stories about the audible crumbling of ordinary life under the effects of a calamity. Similarly, I also like people who are driven into corners by the adversity they face. In this series, the most important part was to portray the attitude of a boy who would give up his life to save a girl after he became a Kabaneri. I don't think anyone can shine brighter than a person who's ready to give up on their own life. Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress would also receive 2 compilation movies, one in 2016 and 2017, but then on May 10, 2019, Kabaneri would get a brand new movie titled Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress: The Battle of Yunato. Taking place half a year after the story of the show, it shows the ongoing battle between the survivors and the Kabaneri at Haiko Station. The same staff would return for the project. In 2017, Studio WIT would work on another anime called The Ancient Magus Bride. Granted, in 2016, they would make a 3-part OVA prequel leading into the anime series called The Ancient Magus Bride: Those Awaiting a Star. George Wada would be the producer of the anime while also being in charge of the planning for the show as well. Norihiro Naganuma was behind the series composition on top of being the director for the show. He was also the director and key animator for the prequel OVAs as well. Norihiro Naganuma worked on projects like Welcome to the Space Show on the image board for the movie, was a key animator for episode 1 of Death Note, and was a key animator on episode 16 of Moribito Guardian of the Spirit. The creator for Ancient Magus Bride, Korei Yamazaki, sat down with Forbes and was asked about the development of the anime. Yamazaki responded by saying that, I get to oversee a lot of the art, the characters, the colors, the overall setting, but the actual drawing is all done by the animators and I'm just helping them out. She was also asked about how it felt to have a managerial role on the anime, and Yamazaki said, I feel that I'm a part of the camaraderie of the creators of the anime and I want to help them out as part of the team. Studio WIT would do the animation for the first season of Ancient Magus Bride, releasing on October 8, 2017 and would end on March 25, 2018. Ancient Magus Bride tells the story of Chise Hatori, a girl that's been abused as long as she's been alive. With no one to run to, she feels she's at her lowest point. Not until a man with a beast head retrieves her from a slave auction. The rest of the story deals with their relationship. I mentioned before that Ancient Magus Bride would only be done by WIT for Season 1 and 2016's OVA. Studio Kafka would undertake the 2021 OVAs along with the second season and the second part of the second season of the anime as well. But back into the realm of video games this time with a mobile game. Studio WIT would be the studio behind the opening animation and cutscenes for the Bandai Namco spin-off game Tales of the Raves, which is based on the Tales series. Tales of the Raves would release on February 28, 2017. On December 2nd, 2017, we would see the release of Laughing Under the Clouds Gaiden, a collaborative effort between Studio WIT and Studio Blade. Laughing Under the Clouds Gaiden was a 3-part spin-off film series based on Laughing Under the Clouds, the anime that dropped back in 2014 by Studio Doga Kobo. Laughing Under the Clouds Gaiden would be directed by Tetsuya Wakano. Tetsuya Wakano has worked on shows like Mushishi as a key animator for episode 8. He worked on episode 2 of Bakemonogatari as a key animator, and was a key animator for Gintama. Mainly serving as a key animator for the majority of his projects, Laughing Under the Clouds Gaiden would make it Wakano's directorial debut. Eiji Umehara would return, but this time working on the series composition for the movie. Yutaka Yamada was in charge of the soundtrack. You may know of his work on shows like Tokyo Ghoul or Vinland Saga, providing the soundtrack for both of these shows. Shoji Hata would be the sound director for the movie as well. Whether it be sound design or being a sound director, it is often a role that goes unnoticed or unappreciated by the majority of people, but it's worth mentioning because it's a very important role for you to be able to hear everything that is going on and how you hear it. His role would be to oversee all audio aspects of the movie, working on shows like One Punch Man, Space Dandy, Gogol 13, all having to do with sound directing or dealing with the recording of said work. Laughing Under the Clouds and Laughing Under the Clouds Gaiden was based on the manga of the same name written by Karakura Kimori. Laughing Under the Clouds Gaiden is about the ramifications of the Great War against the Orochi. Tenka Kumua was paralyzed from the waist down. He has taken the time now to isolate himself from society. Of course, his squad and his brothers try to contact him in any way, but the story unfolds as they find out the secrets dealing with Tenko's past. Laughing Under the Clouds Gaiden Chapter 2 would release on June 9, 2018, and Chapter 3 would release on September 1, 2018. And speaking of 2018, January 10, 2018 would mark the release of After the Rain, based on the manga written by Jun Mayusuke. After the Rain is about a girl named Akira Tachibana who was the absolute best on the track club until an injury was so bad it forced her to retire from the sport, and she meets a man named Masami Kondo, a man that manages the restaurant where Akira works at. Masami is also a divorced dad as well and is an aspiring writer. Akira ends up falling in love for Masami, and the story deals with her deciding on whether or not she'll eventually tell him her feelings. After the Rain would go on for one season ending on March 30th, 2018. Ayumu Watanabe would be the director for this show. Past works include doing the storyboard for episode 19 of Azumanga Daioh, did the key animation for Doraemon The Record of Nobita's Parallel Visit to the West, among various other Doraemon projects, and he worked on the storyboard of Negima. Hitomi Mieno, also known as Deko Akao, also worked on After the Rain. She did the series composition for it. Hitomi Mieno is a singer, songwriter, scriptwriter, and radio personality. She's been making music as early as 13 years old in 1994. Her music has been used for several anime openings, shows like Legend of Crystania, Great Fighter Dendo, Mashin Hero Wataru. Shows she's done scripts for are Fresh Precure, Bakugan Battle Brawlers, and Arakawa Under the Bridge. Hitomi Mieno wrote the script for episodes 1, 2, 3, 7, 11, and 12, working alongside Eiji Umehara, who would write the script for episodes 5, 8, and 9. The widely known and immensely talented Ame would provide the vocals for the ending song of After the Rain. Ame would do the ending song 29 for Bleach, perform the opening for Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works, and even did the ending song for the 5th season of Natsume's Book of Friends. Yuka Shibata would do the character design for the anime. She's worked on projects like Fooly Cooly as an in-between animator on episode 5 and 6, Spirited Away doing in-between animation, and worked on Die Busted as animation director, character animation director, assistant animation director, and other roles for that show. Studio WIT, once again no stranger to video games, did the opening animation for Blazblue Cross Tag Battle. Blazblue Cross Tag Battle being the 2D anime crossover fighting game developed by Arc System Works, spanning from several different IPs such as Ununited Birth, Persona 4, Ruby, and more. Blazblue Cross Tag Battle would release on May 31st, 2018. That wasn't the only game that they worked on during this year. Studio WIT would do the opening animation and all cutscenes for the mobile game Princess Connect Redive. On July 13, 2018, Studio WIT would collaborate with Studio OLM for Pokémon the movie The Power of Us. It would be the 21st Pokémon movie made. Eiji Umehara makes another return and would work on this film as a scriptwriter and worked on script composition as well. Aya Takaha worked on the script as well. Her other works would include being a scriptwriter on Ancient Magus Bride and episode 12 of Psycho-Pass. Yuko Kato served as one of 36 animation directors for the movie. Her past works would be as an animation director, chief animation director, and key animator for Kakegurui. She was an in-between animator for Evangelion 3.0 You Cannot Redo. She was also a key animator on episode 20 of Parappa the Rapper. Takashi Otsuka worked on the storyboard. He was an episode director and did the storyboard for episode 17 of Haikyuu, did the storyboard for multiple episodes of Attack on Titan Junior High School, and will go on to be the director, worked on storyboard and the screenplay of One Piece Stampede. Yoshikazu Miyao also worked on the storyboard as well. His other works would be providing the storyboard for episode 4, 13, and 21 of Fate Apocrypha, was an episode director, did the monster design, and even provided the storyboard for Final Fantasy Unlimited. And he was an animation director, episode director, and did the storyboard for Hellsing. Shizue Kaneko, the character designer for The Power of Us, was interviewed on the film. She was asked about how she would describe her character designs, and she responded with this. It depends on the work, but with Pokemon I was aiming for simple and realistic designs, with characters wearing clothes a real person might actually wear. Also, the director told me to draw things with my usual touch, and I normally draw things with a soft and gentle atmosphere. If only I had more time, I would have stuck at it a little more, but that's for my satisfaction. Pokemon the movie The Power of Us would earn a staggering $23,740,788 at the box office worldwide. Doesn't come as a shock considering Pokemon is the #1 piece of media in the entire world. Congrats to the team behind the project. 2019 was a substantial year for Studio WIT. They would be the ones at the helm of the adaptation of a manga classic known as Vinland Saga. Vinland Saga is a manga with a lot of respect and universal praise surrounding the work, and Studio WIT was up to the task to provide the animation for season 1. Vinland Saga, written by Makoto Yukimura, is a story about Thorfinn's quest to avenge his dad and to murder his killer Askeladd. He travels with him as a part of his crew with the intention of hopefully slaying him in battle. Crunchyroll conducted an interview with Shuhei Yabuda, the director for Vinland Saga, alongside the author Yukimura and Hiroshi Seko, who was behind the series' composition. When asked about the anime original scenes, Hiroshi Seko stated that, "When I was developing the series outline, I told Yabuda I wanted to show it in chronological order to illustrate Thorfinn's growth." Yabuda responded saying, "And that really made sense to me, so I agreed. That's why we ended up putting bits of Thorfinn growing up in episodes 5 and 6. I was interested in seeing how a 6-year-old would survive after being suddenly taken in by a Viking band, and I also wanted to see how Thorfinn grew from a gentle boy into the young man he becomes." Yabuda would go on to say, the end of episode 6 is a scene in East Anglia taken from the manga, so we had to have scenes for Thorfinn leading up to that point, establishing how his character developed. In episode 5, he showed how he gained the ability to survive, and how he made his contract with Allele. In episode 6, we revealed the process of how Thorfinn gained the ability to fight as well as his internal feelings in East Anglia. I thought the scene showed him truly stepping into the world of battle as part of Allele's band, showing his transformation into a warrior. Vinland Saga Season 1 would premiere on July 8, 2019, and would conclude on December 30, 2019. Takahiko Abaru would provide the character design for Vinland Saga, with Kenji Wasaka and Tatsubori Moto as the sub-character designers for the anime. Takahiko Abaru worked on the second key animation for Redline. He did the second key animation for Iron Man Rise of Technovore, and was the in-between checker for Paprika. Studio Bamboo worked on the background art for Vinland Saga. The themes of Vinland Saga spoke to the team, and there was a genuine love for the source material. Hiroshi Seka would speak more on the success of the anime. He'd say that, "I believe the strength of the source material played a big role in getting so many people to watch the anime. There are plenty of movies and novels featuring Vikings, but it's rare for the protagonist to be one young boy. I think that's one of the distinctions that helps Vinland Saga stand out from the pack." I said it earlier in the video, but WIT would only develop the first season of Vinland Saga. They would pass on the anime to Studio Mappa. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, it was due to the scheduling conflicts mainly as to why Studio WIT couldn't foresee the other seasons of Vinland Saga. However, a lot of the staff from the first season would work alongside Mappa on the production of Season 2 of Vinland Saga. Shuhei Yabuda would still be the director, Hiroshi Seka was still in charge of series composition, Yusuke Takada was still the art director, and Takahiro Abaru was still doing the character design. On September 10, 2019, Studio WIT would work on an OVA titled The Girl from the Other Side. The Girl from the Other Side was based on the manga of the same name written by Nagabe. This OVA was bundled with the limited edition of the manga's 8th volume. Satomi Maya was the director for the OVA and also did the storyboard for it. She worked on various animated music videos such as Ribbon, Suyoku, and Clone. She was the director for Ribbon and Suyoku and would be a key animator for Clone. Some of the staff that worked on this OVA had only ever done a bit of works prior to the OVA, getting more fresh faces onto a smaller project like this. Working alongside Satomi Maya was the director Yutaru Kubo, who would also work on the same projects as Satomi Maya. George Wada would also be in this project but as a planner. Mitsushisa Ishikawa was an executive producer on this project, seeing as production IG would help produce the OVA. The Girl from the Other Side was about a world split into two realms, but inside both realms, said inhabitants are told not to wander into the other realm or else they'll suffer a curse. Shiva, a girl living on the other side of the realm, lives with a guardian who is also a demon known as Teacher. Shiva and the Teacher aren't allowed to touch one another, but they embark on a journey to find Shiva's grandmother. The OVA was only 10 minutes long. On June 2nd, 2020, WIT would produce an anime original called Great Pretender. Hiro Kaburagi would return to direct this project. He was also the episode director for episode 1 and directed the ending song. Hiro Kaburagi would also work on the storyboard for the ending song in episode 1 and 2. Great Pretender is about a man named Makoto Edamura who is touted as Japan's greatest swindler. After he attempts to scam a French tourist in Japan, he gets sent to Los Angeles and the story deals with him working with said French tourists on a multitude of scams across the world. Serving as the assistant director for Great Pretender, we have Ryuji Masuyama. He worked in the Amazing World of Arrietty as a key animator, worked on the storyboard for Promare. He was also director, episode director, key animator, and storyboard artist for Blend S. Ryota Kosawa, the writer, was interviewed on Anime News Network about Great Pretender, and he was asked about how the process was for creating a series for Netflix. Kosawa says, "For a normal television series, it is difficult to deliver every episode before the date of the first broadcast, but I'm glad this time we were given a schedule that allowed us to make the delivery just in time." Also, Great Pretender has a lot of characters who can speak multiple languages, so the non-Japanese languages are mainly dubbed overseas and mixed with the audio at sound editing stage. As for who puts in the money for those parts, I think it comes from the Netflix budget, and there's an understanding from companies related to the work from the Japanese side. I'm very grateful that an environment was established where we could easily create the anime. Yoshiyuki Sadamano did the character design for Great Pretender. You'll know his art style primarily from Evangelion and Fooly Cooly, where he did the character design for both shows. They were even asked if Sadamano's art style would clash with the background art style, and Kodama would respond with, "Because the story is based on the real world, I wasn't worried that Mr. Sadamano's character designs would clash with the background art style. If anything, I had more apprehensions that the colors would clash rather than the designs. It's the job of the color design section to coordinate the colors and the characters with the artboards." George Wada reached out to Ryota Kosawa and they had this to say.
そうですね、テレビドラマや映画を普段は描いているので、アニメはとっても興味があったんですけど、なかなかちょっと怖い部分がよく知らない世界ということもあって、悩んでいた時期もあったんですけど、この和田さんがとっても前向きに人をこう乗せてくれて、やる気にさせてくれて、ですごいこうチームを作ってくれたんで、やってよかったなと今すごく思ってます。
Wada stated that Kosawa made it comedy-based, and due to him having written great comedies in the past, he had to reach out to him. Kosawa said he had written the script for Great Pretender as early as 2014. Great Pretender was a very interesting series for Studio WIT to tackle, an anime that wasn't Japanese in nature at all. It starred a Japanese main character, but the entirety of Great Pretender had a very diverse cast with several characters having different ethnicities. Yoshiyuki Sadamino talks about this when asked how the research process was for American characters or characters that weren't Japanese. Sadamino said he'd use actors as references for the character backgrounds, but not any particular actor. In an interview with My Anime List, Hiro Kaburagi would further elaborate on this question of research for the show, saying that we're all based in Japan, so we don't have a very clear image of what the foreign countries that are in our stories are like. The research was a lot of work and was quite tough. I think our image of some of these foreign countries is still somewhat hazy, but it's a really fun story, if you could look past some parts that aren't quite accurate. Great Pretender was created for mass appeal, not having just the Japanese audience be the ones put the primary focus set on them, but rather everyone across the world could enjoy the product. Studio WIT felt strongly about this particular project. Seeing as it's an anime original, they're allowed free reign over the process of the show, but they acknowledge this is also a challenge in and of itself, seeing as there's no reference point or prior following to the work. Great Pretender would run for 23 episodes, with the first 14 episodes airing on August 20th, 2020, and the last 9 episodes airing on November 25th, 2020. This was only the case for places outside of Netflix Japan. Great Pretender also has the privilege of being the only anime to exist with an ending song performed by the late legend himself, Freddie Mercury. The song, of course, would be none other than The Great Pretender. Great Pretender would receive a movie in 2024 called Great Pretender Blazblue. It was in theaters earlier this year on January 9th and the 10th in select theaters in the US. Hiro Kaburagi would still be the director for this project. Mai Tashima was the assistant director for Blazblue. She was an in-between animator for Nekomonogatari Kuro for episodes 1, 3, and 4, also an in-between animator for Steins Gate the Movie Load Region of Deja Vu, and for Detective Conan Zero the Enforcer. Great Pretender Blazblue, having released in only 25 US theaters, it made $22,624 at the box office. Ryota Kusawa instead would be in the script supervisor role, whereas Taku Kishimoto was helping with series composition. Taku Kishimoto having worked on the Fruits Basket remake, Hanebado, and Erase as a scriptwriter. In December of 2020, Studio WIT would start up a stop-motion animation studio within WIT. Who they started with was the director of the short web series Poi Poi Molcar. Studio WIT is still recruiting members for the studio to this day. April 3rd, 2021 marked the release of Vivy Fluorite's Ice Song, an anime original series created by Eiji Umehara and Teppei Nagatsuki, the creator of ReZero. A series already high on anticipation just with the names of the studio attached to the project alone. Shinpei Izaki, an employee from Production IG, would be appointed as the director for the show and would direct the ending song along with episodes 9 and 13 for the anime. His past work includes being the episode director for episode 21 of Banana Fish. He was an episode director for episodes 17 and 22 of Blue Exorcist, and would have directorial work on Gunslinger Stratos. Yusuke Kubo was the assistant director on Vivy. He's worked on the storyboard and was a director for the 8th episode of Goblin Slayer. He'd worked on the storyboard and was an episode director for episodes 29 and 35 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind. And he worked on Steins Gate Zero as an episode director, storyboard, and on storyboard assistance. Satoru Kosaki would provide the score for Vivy. His other work on soundtracks would include shows like the Monogatari series, The Melancholy of Haru Suzumiya, Beastars, and Fate Extra Last Encore. Yusuke Takada was in charge of the art direction, and Yuichi Takahashi was behind the character design. Yuichi Takahashi was a key animator on Promare, a key animator for Mob Psycho 100's opening for Season 1, and was an animation director, character designer, and chief animation director for Fooly Cooly Alternative. His work on Vivy would include being the animation director, chief animation director, and key animator. With Vivy being a time travel story, getting someone as prominent in the genre as Teppei Nagatsuki would be extremely beneficial. When asked on an interview with Nippon about Nagatsuki's involvement with the anime, Eiji Umehara had this to say. I was a part of the scriptwriting team for the anime adaptation of Nagatsuki's ReZero Starting Life in Another World. After reading the light novels and speaking with Nagatsuki during meetings, I felt we got on quite well together and that it'd be fun to team up and work on something. So, I brought up the idea with him and that's how we got the ball rolling. Teppei Nagatsuki would add on to this by saying, yeah, we met face to face while working on ReZero, but I first heard about Umehara through a video game I had recently played. It was a really interesting game and I thought to myself, man, that was great, who wrote the story? And listed in the credits as head writer was Umehara, so I made a point to remember his name. The very next day, we were having a meeting about scriptwriting for the second cohort of ReZero. Umehara and Nagatsuki had a very pleasant working relationship on the project. Creative differences would arise, but nothing to the point of arguing, but rather having a dialogue over how the narrative would flow. Usually, with very strong creative minds on a singular project, tensions will rise, but not with Umehara and Nagatsuki. Vivy Fluorite's Ice Song tells the story of a humanoid AI named Vivy, and an AI in the form of a teddy bear named Matsumoto requests Vivy to go on a journey to rewrite history to prevent a war between the AIs and humans in a century later. Vivy would run for one season with 13 episodes. Initially, Vivy was set to have 12 episodes, but the team decided against it. Nagatsuki touches on this and says, "That was the original plan, but when we tried to organize the story into episode 1, episode 2, etc., we just couldn't manage to fit everything allotted for episode 1 into a single episode. We had already decided how the story would end, but as we were writing it, we realized that there was just no way we could cram the stuff we planned for episode 1 into a single episode. So, we begged the producer to let us add another episode." As for a continuation of Vivy, both Umehara and Nagatsuki said they felt the story was complete with the season they produced, and anything after that wouldn't personally feel right to them had they continued it. Vivy blew viewers away with its stellar animation and choreography for its fight scenes. Whether it be Vivy vs Kakutani in episode 9 or Vivy vs Elizabeth in episode 4, it was all due to the talent of Masahiro Tokumaru. Umehara would shed some light on Tokumaru's involvement with the action. The storyboards and animation were done by an animator named Masahiro Tokumaru, the same person who animated the AI battle between Vivy and Elizabeth in episode 4. Personally, I like the action at the start where Kakutani grabs Diva's hair. That was another scene that wasn't in the screenplay. It was an idea that Mr. Tokumaru added in. I was also stunned by the way he depicted that series of shifts in the center of gravity, being blasted away, rolling on the floor, but never falling all the way, and then getting right up before the knife is pulled from the arm. As I said before, Vivy Fluorite's Ice Song ran for only one season, ending on June 19, 2021. With the chapter being closed on Vivy, it was time for WIT to shift focus on another series. On October 15, 2021, we would see the anime adaptation of Ranking of Kings. Yosuke Hata would be the director for this project. His other works would include being an episode director, key animator, and storyboard artist for One Punch Man. He was also an episode director and storyboard artist for Death Parade, and worked on Boogie Pop and others as an episode director, assistant director, and storyboard artist. Ranking of Kings tells the story of Prince Boji, the heir to his family's throne, but Boji lacks the ability to speak and hear. While Boji isn't necessarily liked by his family, he ends up making a friend with a shadow named Kage. That being Boji's first actual friend, the story details their friendship and Boji's ascent to being a king. Yosuke Hata said the art style of the manga is what originally stuck out to him, and the deeper themes within the series as well. In an interview with Crunchyroll, Yosuke Hata was asked about what aspects of the story he wanted to expand on in the anime adaptation, and he responded by saying, "I definitely wanted to capture the liveliness of the movements of the characters. As you know, Boji cannot speak, so we were really trying to be very expressive with the emotions through the movement and communicate that to the fans and the viewers watching the show. And so that's definitely one thing we were very careful about." Atsuko Nozaki would return to provide the character design for Ranking of Kings while also being the chief animation director, key animator, and storyboard artist as well. Arifumi Amaya was the assistant director on the project. His most famous contributions to anime would of course being a key animator on every season of Attack on Titan. Maiko Okada was the animation producer for Ranking of Kings and is currently an animation producer at Studio WIT. With that, she was also producer and production assistant on the first and second ending songs. When asked about how Okada felt personally on the production of Ranking of Kings, she responded by saying, "I think the one thing that was really memorable was the connection we built with our fans during production. We didn't really know how the show was being received by fans immediately, but around episode 3 or so we started hearing fans were really watching the show. We wanted to give back to the fans for giving us love and all these gifts and for caring about us. Some of the team members like the director and even the character designer started sending little notes back to these fans." Ayuko developed the soundtrack for Ranking of Kings. Prior to her work for Ranking of Kings, you'll primarily know her from Cells at Work, where she made the soundtrack for both of the seasons of the show. The music in Ranking of Kings is akin to music you'd hear in an RPG, and that was by design. When asked about the score of Ranking of Kings, Yosuke Hata described it as trying to go for a Middle Ages kind of image. Kind of close to the music that Japanese video games are using. Maiko Okada would expound more on this. She says, "We really owe it to Mayuko, who designed all the music that you heard in this series. I heard she was continuing to record even when she was so tired that she was kind of getting wobbly, but she really put in a lot of effort and work because she loves this story." Ranking of Kings Season 1 ended on March 25, 2022. It would have 23 episodes total. Ranking of Kings would have another season titled The Treasure Chest of Courage, but this time, it would be about short stories from the characters in the show. The Treasure Chest of Courage released on April 14, 2023, and it would end on June 16, 2023. A Ranking of Kings movie was announced on the official Twitter account as well. Further details on that will happen in the future. On July 1st, 2022, Studio WIT would announce that they're having a crowdfunding campaign to help boost global appeal for the studio outside of Japan, saying that, "Since 2012, we have produced various animations over the 10 years, but it seems not many people know about us as an animation studio. We have a strong desire to bring our contents to anime fans around the globe. Although there were opportunities to communicate with fans at physical events in Japan, we would like to celebrate our 10th anniversary by letting fans around the world know more about our works and us." WIT announced that they will have their first booth overseas at Japan Expo in France on July 14th to July 17th, 2022, and at Manga Expo in Taiwan on July 28th to August 1st, 2022. Studio WIT said the funds used in the crowdfunding campaign would be allocated to the production and construction costs, team transportation to events, streaming event production costs, any which way to help the company grow and nurture their talent. 2022 saw the release of the Netflix anime original movie called Bubble. Studio WIT would acquire a dream team for this project. Tetsuya Araki returned to the director's seat for the movie and would also work on the storyboard. Takeshi Obata was the original character designer, and for anyone who might not know who that is, Takeshi Obata is the artist for Death Note and Bakuman. The script would be written by Gen Urobuchi, the man who created Madoka Magica and wrote the light novel to Fate Zero. For the soundtrack, they would once again get help from the legendary Hiroyuki Sawano. The main song Bubble would be performed by Eve. You'd know Eve's work on things like Jujutsu Kaisen's first opening. Bubble is about a dystopian Tokyo where the gravity in Tokyo ends up broken, so this spawns groups of people partaking in parkour battles to trade supplies for survival. Hibiki, more of a wild card type of player, ends up falling into the sea, but a girl named Uda saves him. The story shows you Uda and Hibiki's time together as a romantic coming-of-age story blending in the apocalypse with parkour. This type of work would seem alien to anyone that has followed Tetsuya Araki's work in the past. Araki would be asked about this very same thing. Araki replied by saying, "It all started with conversations with our producer Genki Kawamura about telling a coming-of-age story. That was also the point where we decided to use the motif of the Little Mermaid. What I ultimately wanted to depict was this sense of meeting someone that would make you break out of your own shell and break free, but also told through action sequences, which you can see in Bubble through the various parkour scenes." Araki touched on the Little Mermaid being the inspiration behind the movie down to how the film was being portrayed. He says, "The motif of the bubbles comes from the Little Mermaid. The story is about a mermaid that turns into bubbles and ultimately disappears. We wanted to reverse that and make it a story about bubbles that turn into a girl. Since the bubbles in the film have their own lore, we had to work to convey their role in the story through visuals. Since the details of the bubbles can't be explained through dialogue, it was a tough task to convey their role in the story while ensuring that the audience understands. We tried to express a sense of life in the bubbles through controlling their color gradation." The visuals were a very important aspect on Bubble. Even though this world has been devastated by tragic events, there is a serenity and almost peacefulness to the film. All of this was something Tetsuya Araki had in his mind for it. One new thing we did for this movie, because we wanted it to be a bright and colorful story, was to include someone in our staff called a color scripter. We put that person upstream of the entire production process so that we could really control and define the colors and the way we wanted to tell our story through that. That's ultimately how we have arrived at this bright, colorful movie that you see. Even though Bubble released on Netflix on April 28, 2022, it would see a theatrical release on May 13, 2022. It would gross over $509,309 at the box office. Assembling this monstrous team to make a project like this seems almost nigh impossible. Person after person of such reputable work, how did any of this even come to be? Adding to the production of Bubble, Araki had approached Kawamura and proposed the thought of the two of them making a movie together, saying that he wanted to work with someone who was well versed in being able to create content for mass appeal. Now, Kawamura, having been a fan of Tetsuya Araki's directorial work on Attack on Titan, it was essentially a done deal. They'd spent half a year discussing the ideas. Gen Urobuchi helped them with the science fiction concept and would expound more on them. Araki is already familiar with Gen Urobuchi due to the two of them working together on Guilty Ground, but Urobuchi was uncredited based on the work he was doing. Kawamura was more than happy to collaborate with Urobuchi, having been a fan of Madoka Magica. Takeshi Obata originally was extremely busy at the time to consider doing the project. Having read what the story Bubble was supposed to be, he had reached out to Kawamura and agreed to the project. A passion project from all these talented creators, something they all felt struck a creative chord for everyone present on the movie. Before we get into the next project WIT would work on, I have to mention that in May 2022, WIT would join in a partnership with Aniplex, Cloverworks, and Shueisha to form a brand new company called JOEN, which is a company focused solely on the production of art and animation. Their company statement is, "We strive to support the animation industry and related ventures by taking a supporting role and allowing the people involved in planning, production, and distribution to take center stage. We'd like to rise to the challenge of establishing a new framework for the animation industry through cooperation with those who can help us accomplish this goal, supporting creativity, empowering creators." A company driven by making sure everyone is taken care of and valued for their time spent on creating the content we enjoy. They said, "We aspire to introduce a new structure for those involved in the creation of animation, by creating an environment that allows for the continuous production of high-quality animation while ensuring studios and creators are rewarded in line with what they produce." This is a very honorable goal to achieve for a company as hardworking as animators, creators, anyone involved in the production process, and with the backing they already have with the companies that are behind it, this was meant to be taken with absolute certainty. Seeing as one of the companies mentioned in Studio JOEN was Cloverworks, this leads us into a project that both WIT and Cloverworks collaborated on to make, that show being the widely popular series known as Spy Family. Releasing on April 9, 2022, Spy Family take over the entire world. George Wada would be a part of production yet again, and Tetsuya Nakatake is one of the producers for the show. Kazuhiro Furuhashi was the director on Spy Family. His past works would include being an animation director on episodes 185 and 193 of Urusei Yatsura. He was an episode director, key animator, and worked on the storyboard for Ranma Half, and he would be the director and storyboard artist for the 90s adaptation of Hunter x Hunter. Spy Family now has 2 seasons, with a third being announced, and a movie titled Spy Family Code White. Spy Family Code White released on December 22nd, 2023 in Japan, but it would release in the US on April 19, 2024. It would also receive a limited IMAX release as well. Spy Family Code White would earn $59,625,525 at the box office, earning the top 5 spot for the opening weekend. And prior to Code White's release, Spy Family would have a crossover with Street Fighter 6, receiving a short animation trailer with Yor going up against Chun-Li. The game collaborations wouldn't stop there though. Spy Family would get their ending song Comedy, made by Gen Hoshino, actually performed in Fortnite for the Soundwave series. May 16, 2022 saw the release of the Netflix original anime called Vampire in the Garden. Ryutaro Makihara once again would be a director for this project and would be in charge of series composition. And if the character design reminds you of anything, then it should, because Tetsuya Nishio does the character design for Vampire in the Garden. Tetsuya Nishio has done the character design for Naruto. Ryutaro Makihara talked about his time working with Tetsuya Nishio, about how much he respects him from his past work and the legacy he's led in the industry. For the story Makihara wanted to tell, he wanted to go for less dialogue and more on the visual side of things. He felt that Tetsuya Nishio was perfect for the job, even saying that when the two of them worked on Ghost in the Shell standalone complex second gig, he was taken back by how wonderful Nishio's art was. George Wada and Makihara both extended the offer to have Nishio work on Vampire in the Garden. Makihara, in preparation for using specific locations for the anime, he and his team went to the Republic of Karelia located in Russia. Here's a clip of Makihara telling that story.
ロケハンは行きましたね。カレリア共和国っていう、ロシアにある、モスクワから北に行ったところがあるんですけど、そこら辺とか行って、そこはなんかなんだっけ、キジ島っていう島があって、そこはものすごいなんか世界遺産だと思うんですけど、すごい綺麗な木造の教会がある場所なんですけど、なんかそこに行く道中がめちゃめちゃ大変なんですよ。そこはあえて冬行って、冬でなんかすごい大きな湖があって、そこをなんかスノーモービルでずっと行くみたいな、本当に7時間8時間ずっとスノーモービルで行くみたいな、そういうロケハンをしまして、一人で7時間なんか一人でスノーモービル乗るみたいな。で天候もすごい変わりやすいので、突然吹雪になったりとか突然晴れたりとかして、本当もうずっとなんでしょうね、これは何をしてんだろうなって自問自答しながら、そのスノーモービルで湖を横切っていくっていうのは、なんか本当になんでしょうね、この世じゃない場所への旅みたいな感じがして。
Tetsuya Nishio would appreciate that attention was put on something like that. Yoshihiro Ike would provide the music for Vampire in the Garden. His past work for soundtracks would include shows like Ergo Proxy, Cobra the Animation, Dororo, and Kuroko's Basketball. Makihara explained that seeing as they wanted to have a cap on how much dialogue is said throughout the show, the music and animation all have to make up for that, and tell a story that way. With that in mind, Yoshihiro Ike knew how to go about making the soundtrack. Makihara believed the soundtrack was exactly what he was looking for, and it matched the scenes he liked for the music. Vampire in the Garden only ran for 5 episodes, all releasing on the same date. On April 4, 2023, Studio WIT would collaborate with Signal MD to create Kizuna no Allele, which is an anime based on the widely popular VTuber Kizuna I that deals with girls attending a school to train them to be the next big VTuber. Kenichiro Komaya was the director for the anime. He wouldn't be on too many products in comparison to the amount of people present in the video, but he's worked on episode 6 as an episode director for Food Wars. He's also worked on episode 10 of Harakana Receive. Hitomi Mieno returns for this project and will be behind the series composition. Go Sakabe did the score for Kizuna no Allele. His prior works would be the soundtrack for Data Live, Basilisk, and the Digimon Adventures Tri-Film series. Kizuna no Allele received 2 seasons, with the second season ending on December 1st, 2023. With all of this said, it is the year 2024, so what is Studio WIT up to now? Well, for starters, Studio WIT would delve back into the video game sphere and would lend their talents to provide the opening animation and animation for all the 2D cutscenes in the 2024 remake of the beloved Atlus PlayStation 2 title, Persona 3, titled Persona 3 Reload, which released earlier this year on February 2nd, 2024. Studio WIT would create an anime on Netflix called The Grimm Variations, which is based on the Brothers Grimm fairy tales. This will release on April 17, 2024. Clamp will provide the character design for this work. If you don't know who they are, I have a video where I talked about it prior to this one. Worth checking out. But to get a group like this on their project was already big. George Wada would help produce the series, which ran for only 6 episodes. I also have to mention this even though it happened late last year, but Studio WIT would announce a full remake of the anime and manga juggernaut known as One Piece, titled The One Piece. This announcement came for the 25th anniversary of the One Piece anime. The One Piece is coming to Netflix. Any official dates of when it will arrive though has not been given as of yet. In possibly the most shocking news in this video, Studio WIT would collaborate with Warner Bros. Japan to create a Suicide Squad Isekai anime called Suicide Squad Isekai, a fact so bizarre that even WIT themselves acknowledged it on their website. To make matters even crazier, Teppei Nagatsuki and Eiji Umehara are back again writing the script for this work. Eri Osada is the director for Suicide Squad Isekai. She was a key animator on episode 9 of Kill la Kill, was the assistant animation director for Bayonetta Bloody Fate, and was the animation director, storyboard artist, key animator, and chief animation director on multiple episodes of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1. The ending theme song for Suicide Squad Isekai will be performed by popular VTuber from Hololive EN, Mori Calliope. Suicide Squad Isekai is slated for the summer lineup of anime coming soon. Its first 3 episodes are slated to drop at the same time on June 27th in the US. It will release weekly and will end on August 15th, 2024. It's very important to look at Studio WIT and to remember what it is they're trying to achieve here in this space, what their vision is. WIT would state that WIT Studio is a production studio where people who love animation come together. The images we aim to create are works that will remain in people's hearts forever and be treasured. We create animations with overflowing passion and create video works that will move and amaze the viewers. We will still continue to create animation based on what we believe to be universal values without being swayed by the trends of the times. We will continue to disseminate animation from Japan to the world, believing in the potential of creators' creativity. Studio WIT was a company only made back in 2012, has been able to do things a person can only dream of, to be able to get so many talented people across the board to lend said talents in each of these projects, no matter how small or high they might seem. A company bent on showing you their love for this medium, making stories that have a personal connection to them. To Studio WIT for being able to recognize their dreams and having the drive to make them a reality. Hey, it's Leon, and this is another long one. I actually didn't anticipate it being this long, but there was so much to cover in this video, it ended up ballooning into this. I have another studio in the works that I plan on making a video for, but we'll get to that when we do. Hope you all enjoyed this video, and tell me what your favorite Studio WIT anime was. Enjoy yourselves, and I'll be seeing you all next time.